morning. Well, a very warm welcome to the City Guild's webinar today. My name is Mandy Slaney and I'm the Lead Industry Manager for Business. Firstly, I wanted to say a huge thank you for joining the webinar today and also the interest that you've shown already regarding the Employer Industry Board, especially during these difficult and challenging and unprecedented times. Really, the aim of the webinar today is around the Employer Industry Board, but also it's really to highlight the ways that we can work with you and really we value your expertise in taking things forward in the future. And ultimately, we hope we can work together to develop the skills required for the future. Today, we've put a variety of different content in sort of guest speakers in particular. And we hope that it's really going to highlight and demonstrate the ways that you can work with us today. I'm delighted that we have some guest speakers today, in particular Andy Smythe and Jenny Taylor from IBM and Andy from AHA Consulting. We also have some internal colleagues that are also going to present today. So we have Anita Crossland, who's our expert around senior post-16, Patrick Craven, our Exec Director, Remini, who's going to talk about the awards, and also Stephen Patmore, who's our Lead Development Manager. I'd just like to mention that throughout the presentations today, please can you post any questions rather than wait to post them at the end. We will answer them during the Q&A section at the end, but really so that you know, as things come into your mind, you can actually post the questions and we can start collating them ready for the Q&A session. We will also be posting a copy of the recording and the webinar, and also the FAQs that we collate from the session today. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Patrick Craven. Over to you, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Are you ready for me to give my introduction?
Ready for you now, Patrick.
Sorry about that. Okay, I was. Well, look, I mean, I think from my perspective, this is just an opportunity to welcome everybody on this first webinar session. I don't know, is there an overview slide for me to refer to as well in terms of the sort of things that we're going to cover? Or do you just want me to talk more broadly about the background? Here we are, yeah, in terms of, so just to give a bit of background, I guess, to the reason for starting to convene this webinar and to attract employer representatives into the work that City and Guilds do. The purpose of this community is really set against a number of factors which are changing. We know the world of education and training is changing in a vocational and technical context, and that's having implications for both apprenticeship structure and also more directly for technical and vocational education in colleges and schools. And the T-levels is an example of that. One of the elements that is changing quite significantly is the demand for increased not only industry but employer involvement and voice in the design of apprenticeship standards and in T-level qualifications, and the team are going to talk with you during today about some of the requests about engagement more directly in qualification design and support, endorsement and validation. The idea, I guess, in all of the sectors that we operate is that we're increasingly starting to work far more with employers as co-creation partners in our skills system. One of the challenges which is often called out at a policy level is is the potential disconnect between the demand of the labour market and the skills required by employers and the supply from the education and training side of the equation. And so this is an ideal opportunity, in fact a critical opportunity I would suggest, for employers and industry to get closer to that process and help ensure that we have relevant and valuable qualifications that young people are gaining, or even people in work are using to develop themselves. Another reason I would suggest for engaging and working with City and Guilds, we've been around for over 140 years operating in technical and vocational education, and have gone through numerous iterations during that period, but we get involved in a lot of research and policy reports, ranging from things like sensitive instability, which was calling out the continual sort of tensions of a relationship where you have skills policy dictated and influenced by political cycle, when labour market and skills demand needs to be a far longer term view and strategy than that. And more recently, we looked at work like Missing Millions, where we were looking at underutilised skills in the workforce, and then very recently focused on recovery and resilience, and Act Now, two reports that really start to call on government to support the emerging and immediate sort of aftermath of the pandemic, and how we ensure that all professions and occupations recover as quickly as possible. And amongst all of that, I think this particular area across business and management and digital skills presents some really interesting opportunities for us to recover, because they're dimensions which are reflected in different ways when we think about how productivity is identified and measured across different sectors. We think about the cross-cutting value of management and leadership skills, both in terms of improving productivity, but also in terms of allowing organisations to identify the best way in which they can rebuild and recover from the current crisis. And digital, in many ways, again, has that sort of dual dimension of both a cross-cutting discipline that I think we would all recognise most organisations and industries need to develop, and a discipline in its own right in terms of professions and occupations, and certainly one of the remaining growth employment sectors in the current period. The T-levels will definitely require employer input in design and implementation, and the team will talk to you more about that. But from my perspective, I think it's really just to thank you all for giving up your time today and starting on a journey of partnership with City and Guilds over the next few years, which really will ensure that we've got a technical and vocational education system which is the rival of the world. So thank you very much for that, and I hope you have a great session today.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll now hand over to Andy Smythe, Director from AHA Consulting Limited.
Thanks very much, Mandy, and hopefully everybody else like me is very grateful to City and Guilds for coordinating this meeting this morning, and for setting up the opportunity for us to all talk together. I think for me, one of the things that I'd really like to share is my involvement with City and Guilds from two perspectives. I think if I can talk on behalf of maybe the whole of the audience and the employer group here, there really is a question to ask: why would I have got involved with City and Guilds, and what did I get out of that? And certainly my own story here goes back, well, it's just over 9 years when I was in my previous employer, and those of you who know me know that I used to work at TUI. We really had a big issue about needing to make sure that the skills system that we had was more aligned to our actual requirements as an organisation. So we had a number of conversations internally about how could we actually get closer to the voices that could influence change. How could we actually start to make sure that the issues that affected us started to be discussed with more of an intent to get results. So what we really did was had a conversation internally about, okay, well, how could I actually play a part in this as the person who was heading up effectively that early talent and skills agenda. So I was very fortunate to be able to spend a lot of time working with, as it was at the time, with its skills funding agency, so ESFA now, but also I was invited to become a member of the City and Guilds Council, and then I moved from that council to become a trustee of City and Guilds. So I have a number of hats here. The value that TUI saw in this was that what it meant was I could hear and understand all of the latest news as it started to be presented. We could hear the emerging policy. We could also hear all of the initiatives that others were calling for that would actually affect how TUI was able to utilize the skills system. And I think one of the big areas here is really about the opportunity that it gave us to voice our issues directly, both into government through using City and Guilds as an access point, but also to learn from the City and Guilds team, as Patrick has just outlined. They do a lot of research, a lot of policy work, and obviously there's a lot of products and services that are available across the skills sector. And it made it much easier for me to understand which of those would suit my business best. And what that enabled me to do was to then go back to the business and really give them a very focused and concise set of messages about what was actually happening. We all know, everybody that's on this meeting, we've all got busy day jobs. What we also know as a fact is that those above us in our organisations really don't have the time or depth of understanding to be able to get involved in this way. So having this access channel, having this partner was really, really very effective. And what we were able to do then was to start to influence the agenda and start to talk about what mattered to us. Through the collective gatherings then of working in some of the boards and meetings that we then got involved with, we were able then to actually align on some of the really key policy points that we knew, because of the way they were initially going to be designed, didn't quite work for us. So we wanted to try and influence what does that implementation look like. So collectively, we realized that we actually had a much stronger voice that way. So being part of the boards really helped us. And we were able to learn from others as well, because as we all know, we don't know everything. And certainly we were able to see from others that we were talking to that there was maybe a way that we hadn't yet identified, and how we might introduce maybe a process of identifying talent or supporting people through our organisation or partners in the training world that we could be working with that had a really innovative way of working that would now work for us. So all of that was a great plus, and that's why the business thought it was good for me to spend the time that I did on these meetings and in these boards. And actually, as I referenced, I started my career or journey with City and Guilds back in 2011, and I'm still actively a member as a trustee. You might be asking yourself in terms of what will you get out of this? And I think on the next slide we've just got a couple of questions you might be asking yourself in terms of, okay, so how will it make a difference? Well, really, it's going to be about your opportunity to now shape the system. So we know we're at a really important point in time now, as Patrick's identified, in terms of the T-levels themselves, and there's some work to be done there. But I always talk about the system in a slightly different way. From an employer's perspective, there's been too much history really where people have complained about the education system not providing them with what they need in terms of skills in the labour market. But what I realised through my previous work with TUI is that unless you get involved, then really you don't have the right to complain about that, because if you don't tell people what you need, then you shouldn't be that surprised that you don't get it. So there really is an opportunity to shape the system. There really is also that I have an ambition that says, as well as shaping the system, we try to connect the whole set of systems together, because clearly you've got the formal mandatory education process. Now we have this opportunity with with T-levels, and we already have apprenticeships. And what we need to do is to make sure that there is a seamless progression that really does give us a clear line of sight of the talent that's heading our way in the future. So this is about trying to shape the system, building a single pathway or route for people to come to roles that we have available. And when we start talking about this particular group, then actually what we're really talking about is how do we equip people to better understand business, better understand the processes of management, and how do we make sure that they have that digital capability, digital mindset in order to help us thrive in the way business will have to operate tomorrow. The one thing I do know is that we have a history, a legacy in the UK where management has always been cited as one of the key weaknesses in terms of UK productivity. And I'm sure I can probably speak for all of the employers on the call that we can identify places in our own hierarchies, in our own structures, where we could actually do with improving some of our management capability. We could do with improving the way we equip and enable people to be ready for their first steps into management, or even that progression onto a more senior management responsibility. So what this group really has the power to do right now is to start looking at how do we make sure this works for everyone in the future, and very specifically from a selfish perspective, how can I make sure all of this adds value to my organization? Well, the great news is what you need to do is get involved. And for my side of this, it really, once you'd made the decision to get involved, it actually became quite easy. Thankfully, and I will reference City and Guilds again here, thankfully we've actually got a channel here that's already been set up for us. So actually as employers, what we can do now is we can share the realities of what is going on in our world, and we can pull that into these groups. And actually, as a consequence of that, we can then identify where the common issues are, and we can make sure that those are taken forwards and discussed so that we can help make sure that the system then doesn't cause us the problems or issues that we perhaps have experienced in the past. So when we talk about what that means to you in terms of getting involved, you can only get involved if you can convince those in your organization that actually this is worthwhile. And I think that within each of your organizations, you'll have your own unique reasons for wanting to either improve the way that management and business is trained and learned, but actually you'll also understand where it is in your organization that something like a pathway, a seamless progression that brings talent into your organization will make an impact. And that might be the ability to get great people into the roles you need filling. It might be the reduction in the amount of time and effort that you have to do training or retraining people. It might be, for instance, the success that you then start to see in the number of people who are promoted that actually survive, rather than the old sink or swim way of working. So hopefully you can see that there's a number of things there that you can talk to. And I do think that we also need to be mindful that just in every other skills area, we do have a need to support those people that are transferring from one role to another, but also managers themselves, and particularly in the digital age. It's about getting used to new ways of working and learning that. And through this group, we can make sure that we support those that are entering our organizations, but also those that are currently in our organizations. So hopefully that just gives you my take very, very quickly on why I think it's great that you've all joined today. And I'd like to just hand over now to Remy to talk to you a little bit more about City and Guilds.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, all, and it's great to join you this morning on this call to speak about the City and Guilds Foundation, with a special focus on the Princess Royal Training Awards. So the City and Guilds Foundation really amplifies the activities we do across the group through high-impact social investments, recognition, and advocacy programs that we do. So each of the programs we run really acts as a catalyst for us to be able to make a difference to people, to organizations and society through investing our surplus into helping everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, to get opportunities to succeed. So whether we're looking at how we bring together other charitable organizations to address issues or societal challenges like reducing reoffending, whether we're designing awards programs that recognize exceptional staff training, or whether it's designing a measurable tools that shows the genuinely transformative impact of City and Guilds on society, what flows really through all our activities is our approach. Our activity is about innovating, celebrating and evaluating. I'm sure the Princess Royal Training Awards will appeal to you all, as you're all employers who excel at developing your people and are interested in, development strategies as well. So what are the awards? In a nutshell, the Princess Royal Training Awards are evidence-based awards program which provides organizations with recognition for successfully linking outstanding training to improved business performance. So it's an achievement of a standard of excellence. So applicants are trying to show the City and Guilds that, first of all, training, learning and development is integral to their organization. Second of all, they're trying to show how they develop training programs, what sort of things go into the development of those programs, how they are run. And thirdly, they're trying to show the impact of those programs on the organization as well as their people. So it's a unique opportunity to be publicly recognized. The awards are free to enter. The awards are open between January and applications close in March. So really any employer of all sizes and sectors across the UK, private, public and non-profit organizations, employer-led groups who have come together to form training organizations can apply for the awards. And really beyond the awards, if you receive one of them, you get a chance to join our awards alumni network and collaborate with hundreds of PRTA recipients who, like you, are striving to share best practice. And as you know, City and Guilds, at City and Guilds, we take pride in enabling employers to network with the best, and we hope that you will be making the most of this opportunity. We also hope that we can help you shine and that the awards can help you prove the benefits of investing in learning and development. After this, the team will be sharing a link to the Princess Royal Training Awards website after the event. Please feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions about City and Guild, about the Princess Royal Training Awards or any of our other activities. And now I have the pleasure of introducing to you Jenny Taylor, IBM UK Foundation Manager, to give her perspective as a 3-time Princess Royal Training Awards recipient and Commissioner of the Princess Royal Training Awards. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Before we kick off, I would just like to congratulate you, first of all, on recently being named Apprentice Champion of the Year, London region, at this year's National Apprenticeships Awards. Congratulations, very well deserved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we've got 2 questions for you today, Jenny. And first of all, could you please tell us a bit about your awards journey and why you and your team have been, applying for the awards year on year?
Okay, yes. So we've got 3 Princess Royal Training Awards, of which we're very proud. We started in 2016, which was the inaugural year. And I should be honest, the reason we started was that my CEO sent me a letter, which the City and Guilds sent to him, saying, these are the awards, how about it? So I thought, well, right, I've been told. But when I got into it, the application form was the most challenging form I had ever completed, but this is in a very good way, because it really made me think. It's very, very specific. There are several hallmarks, and you have to answer questions and provide evidence against each one to show the quality of your program, your training program, and also to show, I think almost most importantly, return on investment. So it's not just, yes, this is what we do, and isn't it marvelous? It's these are the results, and this is the tangible value that this training program adds to the organization. And that really focused our minds and made us search for the evidence and ask specific questions of ourselves in terms of, you know, are we sure we're doing the best thing? Are we adding value? And all those good things that you really needed to think about. So we submitted in 2016 and we passed, so we were absolutely thrilled. And the award lasts for 3 years for that specific program. So we applied again in 2019 and again passed. But again, the value of applying again was to look back and see, how have we progressed? How have we innovated? What additional value are we adding? And we had the same assessor both times, and she too had looked back and asked some very, very searching questions. And I said to her afterwards that, you know, that was actually more searching than some of the questions my execs ask within IBM. But that's a really, really good thing. And we were able to show progress, and it's, I go back to the application form so many times when I'm asked questions as a reference point, because I know that's where I'll find all the evidence about my training programs. And then in 2020, this year, we put forward our apprenticeship program, because we're now an employer provider for apprenticeships. And again, it was mature enough to show that value add and the tangible evidence of return on investment. And I'm pleased to say that was also passed, and we won another award. So I would really recommend these to other employers, because they really ask you questions. It's not a popular vote like some awards, you know, it's not how much money you spend on it. And one of the wonderful things about the awards is that the variety of employers and different sizes of companies who enter is amazing. So size is no barrier. You know, one of the companies which applied with a, you know, an East Scotland radio station, a very small local radio station, who did amazing things for people with disabilities. So anybody can enter, so go for it is my recommendation.
Thank you so much for that, Jenny. And thank you also for highlighting the fact that, you know, size isn't a matter. And as City and Guilds, as an organization, we are sort of the convener, if you like, or trailblazer in, you know, bringing people together to change policies and stuff like that. That's great to hear. Thank you so much. And finally, can you please tell us a bit about your experience of the alumni network and how it has benefited you personally?
Well, there's nothing better, is there, than talking to other employers and learning from them. And as I've said, the Princess Royal Training Awards attract companies of a completely diverse nature. So I'm a member of a number of employee groups, generally within the tech industry, as you might expect. So I already meet a lot of employers, but with the Princess Royal Awards and City and Guilds alumni events, I meet a completely different set of people. And the award, you know, the alumni meetings are really valuable in learning from others. in completely different sectors, and then going back and applying to my own programs in the workplace. So I would highly recommend the alumni events as well. You know, it's not just about winning the award, it's about what you do afterwards as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jenny. We really appreciate you. I'm going to hand over back to Mandy now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We just wanted to really remind you just to make sure that you post your questions. If you've got any questions at all that you'd like to raise with the guest speakers in particular, please can you just start typing them in now, then we can continue to collate for later on. Now I'm delighted to hand over to Anita Crossland, who's going to talk to you about T-levels.
Thanks, Mandy. Hi, everybody. My name is Anita Crossland, and I am the Post-16 Senior Manager here at City and Guilds. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about T-levels, as Patrick said in the introduction, and start to sort of ask some questions of you. So to set the scene, it's really just as a reminder, some of you may already know what T-levels are, some of you may not. So this is my opportunity to give you a whistle-stop tour of the recent policy and government vision for the future in technical education. So the first thing to bring to your attention is a young person at 16 years old who has completed their GCSEs at school will now have 3 options at post-16. The first option is to stay at school or go to their local college or sixth form, where they may undertake an academic route and continue to study at A-levels. The other option open to them, as we all know, and a lot of you already are very involved in apprenticeships, is that young person can undertake an apprenticeship programme, which basically, as we know, means on-the-job learning. And then the third and new option for that young person is to undertake a T-level. And the idea is that the T-levels actually bring that sort of parity of esteem, so that A-levels, the academic route, and the technical routes can start to give that young person progression opportunities, but also to widen their understanding before they move on into employment. The thing that's different about T-levels is that it really is about ensuring, as both Andy and Patrick have mentioned earlier, is really about ensuring that those young people are equipped with making the right decisions about their future. We know that in the labour market currently there is lots of changes happening, and not only to do with the pandemic, but also those young people coming through the education system. It's quite confusing. There's an awful lot of choice out there. It's confusing not only for those learners, but also for parents, for employers and the providers themselves. So what this vision of new technical education means is that there will be this sort of clear routes through that will also help that young person make a decision. What's really different about T-levels is that it takes an apprenticeship standard and starts to design something that's slightly different, but also has the integral skills and knowledge that that young person needs. What's also really important about T-levels, that it's co-created but also co-delivered by employers. So the co-creation is about ensuring that employers are at the heart of a qualification development. And whilst we've used employers for years as part of our qualification process, it's really important that we ensure that the qualifications that we develop for the future actually meet your requirements, but also prepares that young person and allows them to develop new skills and knowledge which will be critical in the future. The co-delivery means that employers will also have an opportunity to offer these young people some industry placement within the world of work, which is absolutely critical to shape that young person and help them understand what it's really like. Next slide, please, Jo. So what does a T-level look like? I think this slide really starts to talk about what's involved within a T-level. So a T-level isn't just a qualification, so it isn't like anything that's been developed in the past. What's really important to note is that this T-level is a 2-year programme that is undertaken within a college, a school, or a sixth form. This diagram actually outlines what's involved within the T-level programme. It's a 2-year programme, and a learner must complete all components of the T-level to be able to achieve a certificate. This programme will have UCAS points attached to it, which will be equivalent to 3 A-levels, which will mean that young person primary objective is to move into the world of work or onto higher education, but also, if necessary, and if that's where they want to move on to, is into higher education and into university. As an awarding organisation, we're absolutely delighted to have won the contract to develop the T-level programme, because again, unlike any other qualification that we've had in the past, this was something that we actually had to bid for. It's a government contract which lasts 5 years. And I think what's really important is that we as an organisation felt and do believe that business administration, leadership and management is absolutely integral to our brand, but also we absolutely feel that this is one of the core sectors that we need to invest in. So we took the journey and bid for the contract, and as I said, we were delighted to get the outcome in September when we were told that we had won the 5-year contract. So the bit that we have to do is surrounded in black, which is the actual technical qualification, and we will be spending the next 10 to 12 months developing this qualification and to ensure that it absolutely meets what employers need, but also equips that young person. The qualification itself will be made up of 2 key parts. The first is a core, which covers the core theories, concepts and knowledge that that young person entering into business leadership and management has the real understanding of what's involved working within that industry. That part of the qualification will be graded A star to E, and we're expecting it to take between 20 and 50% of the total qualification time. Also within that core are transferable core skills, such as behaviours, working with others, communication, those types of core transferable skills that are critical when working in the workplace. How this part of the qualification will be assessed will be through an external exam that is set by us and marked by us. But also there will be a substantial employer set project that we're looking, obviously, for employers to be involved in, to actually set some problem solving that a young person can get their teeth into. The other part of the qualification actually drills down into the occupational specialisms, which actually are mapped into the apprenticeship standards. This will take up no less than 50% of the qualification time, and that young person achieving the occupational specialisms will be graded pass, merit and distinction. The assessment of these occupational specialisms will be through a synoptic practical assignment, which brings all the skills and knowledge together. So that sort of outlines the technical qualification, or the TQ, that sits within the T-level programme. Alongside the technical qualification are other key elements, such, sorry Joe, if you just pop back to the previous slide, thank you. I just want to sort of really focus here on, as part of the programme, a young person will need to complete a minimum of 45 to 60 days in the workplace. And this isn't in a safe environment within a college setting. This is actually out in the workplace in a variety of businesses where that young person is expected to work through a normal day. And this can be delivered in blocks, in day release, depending on how the local employers want to work with the college. That young person will also need to undertake English, maths and digital skills if they haven't achieved a GCSE at grade 4 or above. any other license to practice that may be required by a T-level. In the case of management and admin, there isn't a license to practice. And there will also be enrichment and tutorial time, so that young person can be nurtured through their 2-year programme. Sorry, next slide, Jo. So, as we've said, what does and what is in the occupational specialisms? So, as we've said, the T-level itself is the business and administration T-level, and the pathway that we have run within this T-level is the management and administration. And as I said, the young person will complete the core component, where the external exam and employer set project will be the assessment point, and then they choose one of the following 4 occupational specialisms. They will either study business improvement, team leadership and management, business support, or information management, all of which are linked to apprenticeship standards. Next slide. So this slide really shows how apprenticeship standards link into the outline content. So as we know, the Institute for Apprenticeships and T-levels actually have convened their own panel of employer experts, and those employer experts have developed the standards that the apprenticeship are based on. And within the standards, you have the skills and knowledge that the employers have recognised as valuable and need to contribute to the apprenticeship. What's really important for the T-levels is the T-levels have also got their own employer panels that are made up of a group of employers that cover those occupational specialisms that I've previously mentioned. So they have taken the standards, that apprenticeship standard, and started to amplify the outline content. They have identified the critical core and occupational specialisms that are needed. That outline content has gone through several consultations, and what has meant that when we won the contract as the awarding organisation, we are now taking this outline content and we are going to turn it into a qualification. We're going to amplify that content to ensure that our employers that work with us will actually start to look at that outline content and look at how it can be delivered to that young person and how it can be assessed. And this really sort of shows you how we will then continue to keep going back and ensuring that we stay true to the outline content, but also that we are mapping back into the standard. So a young person coming out with a T-level after their 2-year programme has the knowledge and skills that we believe will give them the best opportunity when they move into employment. Okay, next slide. And I'm going to hand over to Stephen, my colleague, lead development manager.
Thank you, Anita. Good morning, everyone. So as Anita has said, my name is Stephen Patmore. I'm a lead development manager at City and Guilds, and my team is responsible for the design and development of the TQ for management and administration. So I just wanted to talk a little bit today around just a little bit around kind of the development process and really kind of the opportunities to get involved. You'll have heard throughout this session kind of the importance of employers throughout kind of developments such as the T-levels, and really this is just kind of a few slides just to kind of sort of show where your involvement kind of really counts and really influence the development of the T-level as it moves forward. So just on this slide, there's just kind of, with any qualification development, there are a range of kind of key principles that we have to keep at the heart of the development. Those are things such as kind of the accessibility of the new development and kind of actually how that's accessible to different learners. But really the kind of the key focus for the T-levels and for us here, as you'll see at the top bullet points, is that employer focus. And just to kind of sort of come back and touch on kind of one of the points that Anita raised around kind of co-creation, is that co-creation with employers is vital for us in the T-level development. As an example, one of the assessment elements for the management and administration T-level is an employer set project, as you will have heard Anita say. And actually the importance for us to kind of ensure the validity of that assessment is to get employers involved to help us set project briefs, which will be really valuable for us to assess the skills and behaviours and understanding of a learner to ensure that they kind of have the right range of skills to go into the workplace. So the importance for us there is to kind of have both a representative range of employers and therefore kind of ensuring that our project briefs actually kind of account for the range of work environments that management and administration fall into. If I could have the next slide, please, Joe. Just a kind of note around the TQ development is that it is a quite protracted process, and it's a very kind of robust process in terms of there are lots of kind of touch points with us in terms of submitting the qualification through to kind of I-FATE and to Ofqual for approval. And this slide just kind of shows the points in the next year where we will be reaching out to employers to provide feedback or to offer feedback on the new technical qualification and its associated assessments. And these are points where we would love people to get involved and to actually provide some of that feedback and to support working with us. If I could have the next slide, please, Joe. And definitely kind of highlighting here that kind of we want people to get involved and it's getting involved to make a difference. I think kind of it's been very clear through the kind of whole of this presentation that kind of employers have a major voice in any new qualification development, particularly here with the T-level. And there are many ways that people can get involved. That could be within the writing and development of contents or assessment materials, or equally just as important, kind of the review and validation of kind of what is produced. Obviously ensuring that kind of your voice is heard and that kind of the representative range of kind of employers that we have are actually kind of influencing the design and development of this T-level. It really is about kind of sort of setting the landscape for the future. Obviously the kind of focus here is on kind of learners who are coming through, ensuring they have the right skills and the right kind of attitudes to kind of go into the workplace. A couple of points I just wanted to kind of flag here was that I know often in kind of these kind of qualification development things, we often talk to employers who sort of say, I've never been involved in the development of a qualification before, I've never written an assessment. I think people can often be put off by that, thinking that it's not something they can do. The key really is that kind of what we need is your skills and your experience and your expertise. And we can support how that flows into the development. So never be put off if you've never kind of actually worked in the qualification world before. It really is kind of touching on your experience that kind of we want to sort of bring into this development. And the other point I wanted to just kind of flag there was that actually kind of the work really is kind of will be really beneficial for supporting us in all the processes. So if I could just move on to the next slide, please, Joe. Key for us is to kind of work out how we can work with you. What we're not looking for is to kind of sort of pull people into sort of weeks and weeks of day-long meetings. We're really looking to kind of get your input in ways that work for you, and that kind of that we can sort of capture that in kind of the best way possible. So we're flexible with kind of sort of the ways that we work. Given the kind of the current circumstances, our developments are completely virtual, so there's no kind of sort of requirements to like get into a certain location, spend lots of time there. It's potentially like short 1 hour, 2 hour meetings to give kind of very specific pieces of feedback, and really to kind of sort of ensure that your input is actually like added into the development process. So obviously the employer board is something that kind of you're hearing about today and is something that will support the T-level process. If you are keen to get involved, and if you have other colleagues who might be keen to get involved, or other individuals who you know who work in this sector, we'd really be keen to hear from you and to support getting you involved, answer any questions you have. So if that is something that you kind of feel you would like to support, there is an email address here. If you could just drop an email to that. If you could quote T-levels management and administration in the email, that would just help it get to us quicker. But yeah, we'd be very keen to hear from you, work with you, and ensure that your voice is added to the development process. And I think it's back to you now, Joe.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Okay, well, first off, introductions. My name is Joseph Valentine, and I am the industry manager for ILM, so I look after the management side. So at this point, we would like to run a poll question. So let me click a couple of buttons and hopefully a poll question will appear on your screen. So the poll question is, how can I get involved in T-levels? And so at this point, we just want to get your initial response. So as Stephen summarise there are a number of ways to get involved, a number of exciting ways to get involved and really influence what we do. So hopefully you can see those options there to the poll, and I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that poll. We've got 70% who have voted. I'll give you 5 more seconds and we shall close that poll question. Okay, there we go. We're going to stop there. Let me share the results with you now. So that's really excellent to see that a large proportion of you are very much eager to get involved in writing, reviewing, validating, advocating, and other ways of getting involved. So that's fantastic, wonderful. I think Anita and everybody and Stephen have done a fantastic job there in summarising what T-levels are all about. Okay, so let me close that. There we go. Okay, so moving forward. So I'm part of the team who is setting this employer industry board up. And what you can see on the screen at the moment is that our intention is to run 3 board meetings, so to have 3 board meetings each year. And that is when we will come together and discuss a whole plethora of topics. And in order to recognise our board members, we will issue a digital credential, which you can see at the bottom there. And I think it's really important that we are able to recognise your contribution as board members. And this is specifically for the Business Digital and ILM or Business Management Board. So you will also receive that digital credential by becoming a member of the board. And at this point, when it comes to remit and engagement, I think all of our speakers have done an excellent job in really articulating what it means to get involved and what it means to engage in the industry board, whereby there are a whole number of opportunities to engage with us, from co-creation, learning from others, ensuring that we meet your requirements in our product design and be able to influence that. And I think that's really important. And I think all of those messages have been given quite clearly. So I hope that you do become part of the board. And with that in mind, we have a final poll question before we go into our question and answer session. So our final board question, again, to get your initial thoughts from everything that you have heard today, is, are you interested in becoming a member of the board? So you've got 3 options there. Yes, very much so. Yes, but it will be a different person from my organisation, or maybe you need a little bit more information. And our intention is to follow up after this webinar with some one-to-one phone calls just to be able to share more information with you and to touch base. So I shall pause for a second and let you answer that question. Wonderful. So we're going to close that question now. Let's launch the results. And that's a fantastic response. So 65% of you have said yes, absolutely, with 4% saying yes, but with a different person, and 30% maybe. So that's fantastic. And we will most definitely share more details for all of those that have that would like a little bit more information. Okay, so at this point, I am now going to hand over to my colleague David Wackett, who's going to run our question and answer session.
Hi everybody, thank you, Joe. Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come in. I've got some very positive comments as well about the PRTAs. It's great to see that there's some real enthusiasm and benefits from those. Some excellent questions. We've got a few minutes now to answer them. We've also got an extended session from past as well. Plus, we'll also be circulating the Q&A afterwards as a document or an FAQ document afterwards alongside the slides. So if we can't get through absolutely everything in the next few minutes, please don't worry, we'll try and answer these questions. There's a couple of good questions. There's one from Paula and another one from Robert, very similar in terms of the concerns about progression. So Paula's question is, some employers have raised concerns about the lack of progression routes at higher level apprenticeships. In some sectors, such as engineering, level 4 and 5 apprenticeships are not suitable as progression routes from T levels, as they would not have the industry skills and experience required for these higher level job roles. How can this be addressed? I doubt if there's a very quick answer, but I think the Employer Industry Board is an excellent forum for wider discussion and exploring potential avenues to influence things. I don't know if anybody would like to come in at that point with any contributions.
Yeah. David, if I could just add something to that, and again, I think to assure the board that again, we are delighted to have won all 3 pathways in engineering T levels, and we are in discussions with the institute and the department about that exact problem in terms of progression, because yes, whilst the vision is from a T level, the progression would be onto higher education, higher apprenticeships, there is a recognition that we need to ensure that we are not failing these young people and that we have got that clear line of sight to what that progression is. So we are working with both the institute and the department on that actual sort of topic. And obviously we'll keep everybody updated as we move through the development.
Okay, thank you very much. I've tried to put that as concisely as possible. A similar kind of question from Robert, which you may have answered it to a certain extent. The main issue we're finding with T levels is that with level 3 T level being so aligned with a level 3 apprenticeship in the same field, so science in this particular case, if an individual completes the T level, they cannot get full funding, or in some cases be able to undertake level 3 T level at all. In science, this is the entrance route to the technical apprenticeships that poses an issue and actually limits their options, meaning they would need to go on to either a level 4 or level 6 apprenticeships. However, this puts them into direct competition with individuals who have completed the full level 3 apprenticeship as opposed to the T level, and will have completed the same formal qualification, or in the case of the level 4 apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Sorry, my screen just jumped about. It's basically ruling out some options for the T levels. And, they're in direct competition with people who've completed apprenticeships at that level. So the level 3 T level is putting them at a disadvantage. I think I've summarised that.
Yes, absolutely, completely agree. I think again, it is something that we are in discussions with, and obviously not only ourselves, but NCFE, the awarding organisation who won the contracts for the health and science route. I know that they're also in consultation and in conversation. I think, in terms of that option, as we said, for that young person coming out of GCSE, it's one of 3 options. The T levels are an option for young people. Obviously, if that young person decides an apprenticeship is for them, that's absolutely fine. But as I said, what we have to do is unpick what happens post the T level and ensure that that young person isn't inhibited in any way because of you know, apprenticeship standards or even funding. So I think it is something that is, you know, in consultation and discussion, and we will keep people updated once we have sort of further discussions, if that's helpful.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add something as well, Anita? It's Patrick here. And I think as you say, Anita, these are all very relevant questions, and obviously because we're deeply involved now in a number of T-level programs, we're in close conversation with IFA and the DfE about these challenges. I guess two of my observations would be, I think when we talk about levels of qualifications, we often also get very tightly aligned with age rather than stage of learning. And so I think something to reflect on as well is that it's not necessarily the case that people leave a formal stage of education at 18 and automatically have to step onto their next qualification development program. It could well be that they just step into employment and then they have a period of time before they then engage in the next qualification development program. So there is something to recognise about that sort of difference that is acquired through experience before you engage on a next period of development. The other thing that we are exploring is, in many ways, given the reform of the apprenticeship system, it is now very much more aligned with the concept of an apprenticeship being a job. So there is a job that somebody's engaged with, and therefore one might reflect on the current situation where we know that has had impact on starts because there is high unemployment and there are not the same job opportunities. So sometimes the educational system will be there to reflect as well the options that are available to people at a moment in time as to whether or not classroom-based study or work-based learning, job-based study is the most appropriate option for them. Now, all of that said, we are in discussion with the department and IFA and DSFA about how you allow for a transition from T-level when the logical step might not be level 4 or level 5, and it might just be about top up of work experience or initial placement. So these are all things which are kind of live topics for debate, and I think good reasons why it's important, you know, to be involved with the programme just now.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think it's a good, as you say, it's an excellent point. The remit of the board is to discuss these very issues and to get employer perspective lends significant weight to any arguments that we'd be able to put forward to discussions with the institute or the DfE at some point later. I'm conscious that we're kind of beyond the scheduled time. We do have some extra time to run through some questions. I know there's a couple more questions up on the screen in front of me. We've had a question posted prior to today's event, so I just wanted to quickly hand over to Mandy before we come back to discussing any further questions if anybody wishes to stay. Mandy.
Thank you, David. Yeah, really, I mean, we would really encourage you to stay on afterwards to ask any additional questions, and our panel will be more than delighted to answer them. And also, really, it's about staying in touch. Joe quickly flew through this slide before. I don't think he wanted me to put all the pictures up of the team, but really, this is a team behind the scenes and the ones that you will be continuing with throughout this journey. So I would, we put all our contact details on, which will be on the slides when we send them out, but please do get in touch, even if it's just to find out more information. One of the things we will be delivering is some additional focus groups around the T-level, so you can find out more information, and we'll actually go down to the granular detail of the assessments, what's involved. So please, please do let us know if you're interested in that, and we'll make sure that you're invited. And really, I just wanted to thank all the guest speakers today, in particular, for the time. I think it was very thought-provoking, and also congratulations again to Jenny at IBM. And really just thank you for your time today. But please do stay on if you have got questions, because we really would like to carry on the discussion further. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Hi, thank you, Mandy. Hi, everybody. Hopefully, you're still happy to stay on. Some of our panel members may got other appointments, so we'll try and answer your questions as effectively as possible. There's a question here from Leslie about the work placement. Do we know how the work placement will work? Do we need to commit to provide these through government targets? Well, my understanding is that there's no commitment, there's no requirements from employers in terms of, from a government perspective. It's certainly something that centres would have to liaise with their local employers to arrange those work placements. But yeah, somebody closer to the development of the qualifications may be able to answer that. Has anybody else got a view on that particular question?
No, I think it's certainly one, David, that we could follow up on to make sure, that we can provide some additional information, or just signpost really where that information can be found with more details around the placements. So happy to do some follow up on that one.
Yeah, certainly. My understanding is that it's the government won't be. I don't know if there's incentives as well. I know there's incentives in terms of traineeships, in terms of financial incentives for employers to offer work placements. I don't know if they apply to T-levels. A question from Robert, who asked a previous question about level 3 T-levels and the challenges of progression onto apprenticeships. Would the T-level rule out or cause a reduction in funding if they were to do a level 3 customer service, level 3 business admin, level 3 supervision and management apprenticeship? I suspect there will be. Mandy, Joe, you might be able to answer that a little bit more accurately.
Yes,
or closer
certainly.
to those.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yes, certainly we are pulling some FAQs around this topic, and we have actually raised it with IFA during our regular meetings with them. The last one was yesterday. What we're actually doing is looking at mapping the actual T-levels across to the various apprenticeship standards where we know there is content, which, yes, you are right, goes business admin, team leader. There's also the improvement technician, and the information management, but also public services operations deliveries in there as well. So yes, there is some crossover, and obviously that would impact around the prior learning. So Bryony Kingsland, our funding and policy guru here at City and Guilds, is actually looking at that now. So yes, we will be able to come back with you. It is a funding question, and it is over to really to IFA to clarify, but certainly it's one that we will be feeding back on. So thank you for that question.
Mandy, I wonder whether I could just put a view on this, just in terms of the value of the board here. I do think that this is one of the questions where we can really look at what is, I think, an unintended consequence of how the streams or pathways are going to interact with each other. And I do think the more employers talk about how they're viewing and experiencing some of these challenges, the better it is for the department and others to hear. Because what we all really want genuinely is to provide young people with clear pathways that are unobstructed, but available. And clearly there are some policy crossovers here. And I do think the more employers we get sharing their experiences and thoughts about where some of the blockages are, the better. So it is a challenge point, but actually it's great that we've got a forum through which we can now push it forwards.
Yes, thank you, Andy, and I totally agree. And certainly we have got this sort of arena to do that, because obviously we've got the regular IFA who are also feeding into DFE. So a really good example of how the board can help, help sort of be the conduit really around that topic.
Okay, some more questions coming in. Similar to the one about the work experience placement, will there be any government targets for employers to meet in relation to the workplace? I don't believe there will be, but I think we can address that similar question as well with regard to some further information and guidance for the role of employers in delivering and supporting T-levels with the work placement thing in particular. From John, when it comes to delivery of T-levels, technical support is clearly available from City and Guilds. But for an SME in particular, is there likely to be any mechanism or central resource to help businesses deal with all the admin of placements, including safeguarding and all the other necessary but time-consuming realities of dealing with young people? So I mean, that's really, I suppose, from a provider perspective, or for an employer perspective, about what would City and Guilds be able to do to support that aspect of the T-level provision. Is there anything that we are planning in terms of, I suppose, the admin support of running work placements and for providers for the T-level itself, or is it just subject content support?
David, I wonder whether I can just offer one perspective on this, and I'm sure others will have some input. I think this is one of those classic scenarios where actually this is where we do need people to get together. I think that one of the things that the board may well be able to do, and the people that are inputting to support the board can do, is to really come forward with good practice suggestions, ideas, where maybe one of the outputs from the board is to actually share some good practice advice. Clearly, you can't take responsibility for placements, etc., but I think it can certainly be a forum where good ideas and suggestions and even signposting to other help or resources can be delivered, and therefore helping the broader community to understand what's going on.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Andy. That's excellent answer. I think, yeah, it just goes on to support and underline the purpose of the board to answer some of these questions. A lot of these questions are really about the rollout of T-levels, the impact of them, how they're going to affect progression, and whilst that's not sort of directly our responsibility, we can certainly have a role to play in terms of influencing and discussing with people at the institutes and DFE as well. So, you know, it's further, I think, an argument for getting involved in the board. Question from Roberts: is there limits about being on boards or leading Trailblazer, as I head up 9 Trailblazers and sit on the T-level NCFE similar board? No, I mean there's no limits that I'm aware of in terms of your involvement with a board that the City and Guilds is establishing, or any involvement with development of qualifications and content and so forth. So does anybody else have a perspective on that at all? I'm sure we would welcome your involvement, regardless.
No, I don't think
Sorry, go on.
It's Jenny Taylor here. I'm a Trailblazer chair as well, and also I'm a member of QAA panel for degree awarding powers. So as long as there's no conflict of interest, and you can always declare a conflict of interest, and I do sometimes with QAA in particular, then I don't see a problem.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Very useful answer from your perspective and experience of involvement in lots of. I know that we come knocking on your door for lots of things, so I do appreciate your patience and your inputs in this and other activities as well.
Andy, did you want to add anything else to that? I was just conscious you were going to speak. That was all.
Yeah, I was literally just going to put the other dimension on it. generally the key limitation on how many boards you can be part of is how much time you're able to physically give. But I do think Jenny's answer was absolutely spot on. As long as you're declaring conflicts of interest and you're able to support those roles fully, then there is no limit.
Yeah, thank you. A question from Roberts about the T-level qualification. Is the T-level formal qualification part being designed with a jump-off point, so that if any individual leaves after year one, do they achieve anything? Basically, my understanding is that they don't. So it's not like a learner might experience with a dare I say a BTEC, where there's a small certificate size qualification leading on to a larger diploma size qualification for the end of year two. The T levels are not designed like that at the moment, but somebody might have a better insight. That's my understanding of things as they are at the moment. So if anybody else wants to confirm that, or...
I mean, I can just jump in a little bit. This question obviously has been asked a few times recently on the provider event that we did this week. It is something we've taken forward again, and we are speaking to IFA around this, because obviously we totally appreciate that this may happen. But at the moment, it is a programme, as Anita sort of alluded to earlier, and it is a 2-year programme, but we will be feeding this in, and again, feedback, any sort of updates that we've received regarding this. But it is a good point, and certainly from being in delivery myself, it's a very valid point. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mandy.
David, I wonder whether, again, sorry, just jumping in here.
No, that's fine.
Whether this is another area where, again, on behalf of those industries that are partaking in the board, we then talk about, well, what would be valuable? Because we all know now there is the opportunity for micro-credentials and digital recognition of achievements or experiences. And perhaps it's an area that if there's enough interest in, then the board could solicit the real values that people would place on maybe digital credentials for parts of the actual overall programme, as opposed to the overall programme in its entirety.
Yeah, yes, I mean that's certainly something that we could investigate. As Sitting Guilds, as an awarding body, as a credentialing organisation, to put something in place if that's what employers, if there's a demand for it. So thank you for that. Another question from Robert. Placements, there are no incentives, but they don't have to be paid. They can be across a number of employers, so shared placement. A small proportion of the placement, I think this might be an answer to somebody else posting something. A small proportion of the placement can be in a simulated environment, a centre of excellence, for example, where things such as health and safety are covered, but it must be in an environment similar to the work environment and can only be a small part. This is definitely being considered in areas where health and safety need to be completed before they can go on site. So imagine things such as construction and BSc, that's going to apply in particular. There are also limits to the number of placement students per mentor, so your insurance companies need to be made aware of. So that's some valuable inputs from Robert there. So thank you for that. That's all the questions that we've received today. I did receive a question from Liz Willis at Caring Homes prior to today's event. What are the top 3 key areas that have been highlighted which the board will need to focus on during 2021? So obviously this is an excellent question for further discussion and potentially at maybe at the very first board meeting when we convene that. My thoughts, which other people may want to chip in, disagree with, or add to, I see there's some very practical elements to this board, so feeding into our sort of product development, whether that's qualifications such as the T levels, apprenticeships, our EPA or endpoint assessment service, to make sure that that is fit for purpose, and it really reflects what goes on in the real working world. And also some of those things that I think we've alluded to in earlier questions about sharing general perspectives on training and education, especially work-based training, to raise awareness, and also to get a dialogue going, so that we are better prepared when we talk to government departments and the institutes for apprenticeships in particular, so that we are sort of fully armed. And also coming back, we share that information, that intelligence with you as well. So it's very much of mutual benefit. And one thing that popped into my head is how best to respond to the COVID-19 situation going forward. How can training and development plays a key part in getting the country, the economy back on its feet, if, and hopefully that's not in too distant future, we come out the other side of this. So happy for other people to chip in and say what they think the priority should be for the board.
Yes, thank you, David. I think perhaps because we have got a few minutes, even the people who want to stay on could perhaps have a little think about what are the key topics for you, because that's that is the key sort of value of the board, really, is that it's not our top three, it's the members and what's important to you, and we can help drive that through. So we'd really value, and we will ask again after the webinar today, we will send out a survey to try and capture that, so you can have them discussions within your organisations. But if there are some really hot topics that you think, yes, absolutely, we want to have them top of the agenda, and obviously apprenticeships often comes through, please, we'll give you a few minutes just to actually type in, a few of your initial thoughts.
Andy, I was just going to add to that, just whilst people are thinking about this. I think today's a great exercise and example on showing that we can identify some clear points and issues that people have concerns about. And I think one of the first things that the board would need to do as its first action is to really scope what its initial remit is going to be and where it thinks it can make the greatest impacts straight away. So I do think we're already off to a great start.
Thanks, Andy.
A couple more questions about work placements, which I'll, whilst people might be adding some additional comments. Sorry, another question. Don't worry, we're happy to field questions. It's about work placements and the time allocated to these. How would this affect individuals who may need visas to work, paid or unpaid, and their interaction with T-levels? Are T-levels open to people requiring visas, as they can do traditional study? They can do traditional study visa qualifications, for example, at college. That's a good question. I don't know. I imagine that T-levels, they're there for 16 to 19-year-olds. So the same sorts of 16 to 19-year-olds who require visas to study A-levels or vocational qualifications, technical qualifications in college. I imagine the same thing would apply. The thing about the work placement, I suspect that because that's an integral part of the qualification or the course, I imagine that there would be some exemption, but I'm sort of really guessing there. I think we would need to either look into that, or if somebody has any experience or insights into that, because I'm sure that that is a common issue for learners from abroad at the moment, never mind T-levels. So we might have to come back to that one. Another question about work placements from Laura. Are there any restrictions as to when work placements would need to take place? Could placements take place over the summer period, or do they need only to be during the academic year? I mean, my understanding is that there's some flexibility. They can be large blocks of time, or they could be day release over the course of the whole program. So I don't think there's any restriction in terms of the academic year and holiday or vacation period. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts or insights into that, but I'm pretty sure that they're flexible.
My understanding would be that there would not be a restriction, and particularly from a government and a policy side, they'd want to make this as flexible and operationally easy for employers as possible. So I'd be very surprised if they were to restrict that.
I mean, that is a significant challenge to the program, to the T-level program, is how the work placement will work. So I think, you know, any flexibility would help ease that, or ease, you know, go bypass any of those challenges. As more employers are embracing working from home, how can we adapt work experience to incorporate remote working? That's from Paula. Excellent question. That might depend on the context of the T-level and the subject area, the context of the work placement. But that poses significant challenges, I imagine, because, you know, a young person on a work placement, if they're working from home, they're not being exposed to the full benefits of a work placement in the real workplace with other people. You know, contributing, communicating, working alongside more experienced people, they wouldn't get the full benefit of that. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. I imagine it's a significant challenge, you know, considering, you know, the COVID situation and people are working remotely at home.
It's Jenny Taylor here again. We've been looking at this very seriously, not just for T-levels, but we were looking at Kickstart, which I'm sure you know is the government programme for the unemployed young people during the pandemic and probably afterwards as well. We've decided it's too difficult at the moment, because that's a 6-month placement, to do that completely remotely. Because you have the problem of logistically, they need to have equipment. Can they go to a learning centre to do their work? They won't, you know, you can't assume they have broadband at home or suitable working conditions, all those sorts of things. But we are currently, at this very moment, actually running a 2-week programme for disadvantaged young people, which we normally run in our South Bank location, and we're doing it all remotely. Okay, it's only 2 weeks, but it's a really interesting pilot to see how it works. And so far, so good. It's going swimmingly well. So I think it needs testing a little more, but I think it is possible, but a lot of difficulties to be overcome. But I remain positive, because we really do need to help young people get ahead in these very difficult times.
I think I would back up what Jenny's just said. I'm aware of some organisations that are actually operating what they framed as virtual work experience opportunities in the first instance. But that was all in the design and planning before the pandemic arrived, ironically, which was quite interesting. Perhaps they knew something we didn't. And actually, there are some mechanisms and models where you can try and support these programs. I agree with Jenny, to do it over 6 months is a big ask. But actually, I do think the technology we're using today facilitates more ways of working. And the point that this project that I was referring to was driving at was not so much how do we support people in a pandemic scenario. It was, well, actually, what is the new world of work? And remote working and working at distance is a far more common issue, or will be in the future. There's clearly going to be some occupations where you can't get practical activity, but that's not to say we shouldn't develop those other skill sets that individuals could benefit from. So I do think it's early days, but I think there are some very innovative thinking and ways forward, but starting to appear.
Okay, thank you. Mandy, I don't know if we're sort of approaching the end. I know there's a couple more questions and comments, some very good comments appearing, which obviously we'll share. So I'm not sure if we're having to finish now.
Yeah, I think we're approaching 11 o'clock. I think I just wanted to end really by thanking you all for staying on, and the questions are absolutely invaluable, because it really helps us to know what types of things we need to be taking forward. I think the questions certainly around how will work placements work being virtual is an ideal topic for the January industry board, because it's something that we can involve IFAT in particular. But as Jenny said, it's much wider than T-levels. It's a problem across all organisations, and one that I don't think that's going to end very quickly. And just following on from that, just to make you aware that the employee board in January will be via Teams, so it will be more interactive. So, you know, people can have cameras on if they'd like, and it really will be, you know, a lot better and a lot more sort of informal. And I think I'd just like to say thank you. Obviously, we've got the employee board in January, but also we will be reaching out for you to help us with the developments on the T-levels over the next few weeks and months. So thank you so much, and thank you to my guest speakers again, and thank you to the team. Stay safe. Thank you.